a discussant comment from Professor Steve Gliessman.
Thank you very much. Gosh, our whole seminar has been such a wonderful bringing together of different ways of thinking about the landscape that we live in, historically, presently, and thinking into the future. I think the key element that our presenters today and yesterday have given us so far is the importance of re-diversification of our food systems. We have been on a trajectory of simplification, of monoculture, of consolidation, and as Alex mentioned, you know, a new kind of economic system that's captured our food systems and really taken it out of the hands of the people who were so important and responsible for the domestication of plants, for the establishment of managed landscapes and keeping those landscapes healthy and resilient over time. And so now we're back in this process of trying to re-diversify our landscapes. And it's totally a transdisciplinary process. No one discipline is going to be able to do it by itself. And this is where agroecology, for me, has been so important in my own sort of transdisciplinary process of learning not just ecology, where I began, but ethnobotany, anthropology, economics, a lot of different ways of thinking. And I think as Junko mentioned, you know, the idea of bringing together in this symposium, you know, ecology or agroecology, anthropology and ethnographies, you know, and thinking about taking these interacting disciplines, different ways of looking at the relationship between people and our landscape is the steps necessary. And we really value the knowledge that's been captured and in a sense regained by looking at the traditional ecological knowledge, the tech in Japan, with its long history of development, at the same time facing so many challenges, as the commons that Meg talked about yesterday has been threatened by development, by loss of young people from the landscapes, from the loss of villages and people living in these landscapes and caring for them. But with the science side of agroecology, bringing back knowledge, not just recording it as ethnographers are so good at doing, but looking at them scientifically, especially from the science of ecology, the science of how nature works, and taking that understanding of how nature is working in traditional agricultural systems, we gain an understanding of the science of the management. Looking at open field burning, as Watanabe-san mentioned so clearly, understanding how detailed fire management can be and what the response of the vegetation is to that management and how important as a cultural practice it's been. And then as we shift to California and think about how fire was such an important part of the native peoples of this region. And it's fascinating that we've known that there are fire response species in California vegetation, species that are common after fire, and then as succession occurs and natural vegetation replaces the grasslands, and a lot of the species, especially the geophytes that you were mentioning, Joji and Alex, they've been diminished. And it's because we no longer are managing that landscape to favor those species. And now that we see the value they have and links into the cultures of the people that were so important in California before their displacement, you know, this is an important piece of our understanding of bringing back the value of plants that we've only looked at botanically as value. And by the way, Alex, I think I owe you a six-pack, so I'll make sure you get it. Thank you for your pictures. So what do we do now? You know, how do we take this scientific knowledge that we've gained, and, you know, as Hitaka-san mentioned in all his really incredible detailed work over the last 20 years on the ecology of agroecosystems and the understanding of how interactions between species are dependent upon traditional knowledge and traditional management, and bring that forward today. And I think part of our journey, kind of looking at what Meg had pointed out about how the commons is being overused and misused, and Junko's presentation about the backgrounds of modern day agriculture, the conventional industrial monocultural model of farming that's pushing us away from working with nature and instead putting us at risk, and we're losing resiliency. And I guess for me, one of the strongest messages that we receive from traditional knowledge is its resiliency, its ability to manage resources, create disturbances, do cultivation, use burning as a tool, but as well-managed tools that, you know, build upon our ecological understanding of how nature works. I've also really enjoyed the way we looked at the archaeology, the evidence of these systems rising and falling, lasting for long periods of times, evolving and developing in new directions as environmental change occurred, as social and cultural changes occurred. It's a dynamic process, just as nature is a dynamic process as well. So, you know, we're faced with many challenges. And for me, in this transdisciplinary process that we're in, bringing science of ecology together with participatory processes, working in communities, especially communities rich in traditional knowledge, and then taking that knowledge and that science together, kind of the science and the practice of agroecology, and moving forward in education programs. And I know in the next speakers, we're going to hear a lot about this kind of process, bringing this knowledge to young people who are going to be the change agents of the future, and putting it in their hands and in their minds and in their hearts as we look forward to revitalizing landscapes, managing them, thinking not just about their own needs, you know, the landscapes themselves, but since climate change as a response to human action and activity is becoming such a critical element, and the only way to reverse that process is going to be major transformation of our food systems, a transformative process in agroecology where the action side of what we do, you know, builds resilience at the field level, but it also moves beyond and becomes a political action as we move towards policy change in our food systems that understands that the environment in which food systems occur, culturally and ecologically, are critical to reversing climate change. And hopefully our understanding of how traditional knowledge and agroecology come together can be an important foundation for this process. So once again, I want to really congratulate the organizers of this seminar and everyone who's presented their work. Many pieces of a process that, when we bring them all together, is really going to create this transformative change process that's desperately needed in our world today. So thank you. I've really learned a lot from everybody's presentation.
Thank you very much, Steve. I think the discussion of braiding knowledge, indigenous knowledge, non-Western knowledge, and scientific knowledge in the traditional academic discussion. How do we find a way to braid the knowledge together, and what can we do to make changes? And as Steve said, I think the issue of monoculture, the problem of damage to the environment, we've seen that, and I think really to think about an alternative way to move things forward. I think we've been having a great discussion. We are running behind with our schedule, so I think we just have to take a break, 4 minutes break, and we'll start at around 6:12.